A woman sits on a plush velvet sofa in a room hidden behind a mirror in Paris. Outside, the rain blurs the cobblestones of the Rue de Faubourg Saint-Honoré, but inside the air smells of beeswax, expensive leather, and absolute silence. On the low marble table before her lies a single object, a handbag. It is made of dyed calfskin, stitched by hand over 25 hours by an artisan whose name she will never know. She has the money to buy 40 of them right now. She has the social standing. Yet, she is not allowed to take it home. The smiling sales associate, wearing white cotton gloves, gently slides the object back into a dust bag. He tells her, with exquisite politeness, that her name has been added to a ledger. Most people assume that markets exist to connect buyers with goods. They believe that if demand rises, production increases, and if you possess the capital, the transaction is inevitable. That is not how the modern world works. In the highest echelons of commerce, the transaction is actively sabotaged. The capital is irrelevant. What the woman on the velvet sofa is experiencing is not a failure of supply chain logistics. It is a meticulously calibrated psychological execution. It is a phenomenon known as engineered scarcity, and it operates on a law that defies the foundational logic of capitalism. The law that a product becomes most valuable only when it is rendered impossible to obtain. We are conditioned to think of scarcity as a tragedy of nature. We think of droughts, failing crops, or depleted oil reserves, the cruel physics of a finite planet. But when luxury conglomerates deliberately burn billions of dollars of their own unsold inventory at the end of a season, or when they limit the global production of a watch to 47 pieces, scarcity ceases to be a geological constraint. It becomes an architecture. In 2021, behavioral economists mapping human desire noticed a strange anomaly in consumer data. When an item becomes moderately difficult to find, interest spikes linearly. But when an item is placed behind a barrier of social humiliation, when a buyer must prove their worthiness to a gatekeeper just to spend their own money, the psychological value of that item escalates exponentially. The brain stops processing the object as a utility. It begins to process it as a survival mechanism. This is the first crack in the illusion of choice. The modern luxury industry does not sell craftsmanship, nor does it sell heritage. It sells the relief from an engineered panic. To understand why a human being will willingly wait 3 years for a steel wristwatch, we have to look beneath the surface of culture, down into the ancient, unyielding circuitry of the mammalian brain. Every social mammal carries a status assessment program running constantly in the background of their consciousness. In the wild, status is a matter of life and death. The alpha primate eats first. The lower-ranking primate starves during a famine. For thousands of generations, our ancestors survived by reading subtle physical cues, the thickness of a mane, the posture of a leader, the possession of rare, bright plumage. In the modern world, we have largely eliminated the physical predators, but the ancient fear of low status remains entirely intact. Anthropologists studying tribal behaviors have long documented the concept of costly signaling. For a signal of dominance to be believed by the tribe, it must be ruinously expensive to achieve. A hunter does not prove his strength by bringing back a common rabbit. He must hunt the apex predator, risking his life for a trophy that has no nutritional value. The luxury industry has weaponized this evolutionary glitch. They understand that a high price tag is no longer a sufficient costly signal because money has become too fluid. True status in the 21st century cannot be bought. It must be suffered for. When a luxury house creates a waitlist, they are not managing inventory. They are creating a digital panopticon. Consider the mechanics of the loyalty quota. To be allowed to purchase a specific iconic bag from certain French heritage houses, a customer must first spend tens of thousands of dollars on ancillary products, towels, pillows, ashtrays, shoes. The brand demands a tithe. They require the consumer to degrade their own financial logic to prove their devotion to the brand's mythos. Neuroscientists have scanned the brains of individuals undergoing these purchasing trials. When a subject is told they are not eligible to buy an item, the brain's anterior insula, the region associated with social exclusion and physical pain, lights up. The rejection is experienced not as a minor inconvenience, but as a biological threat. We are tribal creatures, and to be excluded from the inner circle of the temple triggers an existential dread. And then, comes the revelation. When the consumer is finally offered the item months later, the sudden surge of dopamine in the nucleus accumbens is so intense that it mimics the relief of escaping a predator. The buyer does not feel joy because they own a piece of leather. They feel joy because the pain of exclusion has temporarily stopped. The great justification for this system has always been preservation. The brands claim they limit production to maintain the purity of the craft. They argue that if everyone can have it, the magic disappears. That is the myth. The reality is far more clinical. In the mid-20th century, the luxury market faced a quiet existential crisis. The rise of industrial automation meant that high-quality goods could be produced faster, cheaper, and more perfectly than ever before. A machine could stitch a straight line better than a blind artisan in a Florentine basement. If perfection became common, the entire economic foundation of high society would dissolve. The industry's response was a stroke of dark genius. They stopped selling perfection and began selling friction. They intentionally introduced inefficiency back into the system. They closed factories. They limited distribution channels. They trained their retail staff not to welcome customers, but to assess them with cold, observational detachment. In 2018, a leaked internal document from a Swiss watchmaking conglomerate revealed a strategy known internally as the squeeze. The goal was to reduce the supply of their entry-level mechanical watches by 15% over 3 years, while simultaneously increasing the marketing budget by 40%. The math was infallible. By spending more money to make people want something while producing less of it, they created a permanent vacuum. This vacuum generates a bizarre economic distortion, the secondary market. Today, certain luxury items appreciate in value faster than gold, real estate, or the S&P 500. A watch purchased at retail for $10,000 can be sold seconds after walking out the boutique door for $35,000 on the gray market. This creates a class of consumers who are not enthusiasts, but financial extractors. They buy the asset not to wear it, but to hoard it. But here lies the deeper, more unsettling truth. The luxury houses do not hate the gray market, they protect it. The secondary market acts as a public ledger of their power. Every time a watch sells on an online auction for 4 times its retail value, it validates the agony of the waitlist. It proves to the world that the scarcity is real, that the barrier is justified, and that the illusion is worth more than the reality. As we lift our gaze from the boutiques of Paris and Geneva, we begin to see that this pattern is no longer confined to the wealthy. The architecture of engineered scarcity has broken out of its cage. It is spreading across the entire surface of modern civilization. We now live in an economy that is systematically industrializing emptiness. Consider the digital landscape. In a world where digital files can be copied infinitely at zero marginal cost, the tech industry had to invent a way to force scarcity back into the machine. They created digital tokens, artificial limitations on code, and virtual real estate in digital worlds that have no physical boundaries. We have taken the boundless potential of the digital universe and intentionally broken it just so we can sell the pieces that are missing. Look at the sneakers dropped via algorithms on smartphone apps, where millions of people press a button at exactly 10 a.m., only for 99% of them to receive a message saying they were unsuccessful. Look at the ticket algorithms for concerts, where prices fluctuate based on the panic of the crowd, turning art into a high-frequency trading pit. The logic of casual finance reveals a terrifying trajectory. We have built an economic machine that is so efficient at producing goods that it has destroyed the intrinsic value of things. When food, clothing, and information become hyper-abundant, capital can no longer extract profit from production. It must extract profit from deprivation. The modern corporate strategy is no longer about creating wealth. It is about creating bottlenecks. It is about finding a river of human need, building a private dam across it, and charging people for the drops that leak through. We are witnessing the birth of a new kind of feudalism. In the old world, the feudal lord controlled the land, the physical space required to survive. In the new world, the corporate entity controls the access. You do not own your software, you lease it. You do not own your music, you stream it. You do not own your car's features, you unlock them through a monthly subscription. We are being systematically transitioned from a society of owners to a society of perpetual beggars, waiting in an endless line for permission to access reality. In the end, we must return to the woman on the velvet sofa, looking at the ledger that holds her name. If we strip away the marketing, the heritage, the craftsmanship, and the financial speculation, what is left inside the empty space of the luxury bag? Nothing. The object itself is a ghost. It is a mirror designed to reflect one thing only: the envy of those who are standing outside the glass. The entire multi-billion-dollar apparatus of engineered scarcity exists to solve a single tragic human problem: the unbearable lightness of being ordinary. We have constructed a civilization where our internal sense of worth has been completely decoupled from our actual existence. Because we can no longer find meaning in the community, in the sacred, or in the quiet rhythm of a simple life, we look for it in the ledger. We look for it in the eyes of the gatekeeper who decides whether we are worthy to cross the threshold. The profound discomfort of this realization is that the system cannot be fixed by changing the economy, because the economy is simply an unedited printout of our collective psychology. The luxury houses did not invent this hunger. They merely mapped it with terrifying accuracy. They know that the human animal is the only creature on earth that will starve itself to possess a symbol. When the woman finally receives the call, a year from now, telling her that her bag has arrived, she will return to the hidden room. She will hand over her card. She will take the box. But as she walks out into the Parisian rain, carrying the prize she fought so hard to obtain, she will notice something strange. The hunger will not be gone, will have simply shifted its shape. She will look at the person walking past her, notice the watch on their wrist, and the cycle will begin again. Because in the kingdom of artificial scarcity, the search is never about finding what you want. It is about avoiding the terrifying realization that even when you get it, you are still entirely empty. Thanks for watching. Subscribe to the channel